Up in the heights of northern Europe, the forest is home to royalty.
It is the king of the forest. It's a very respectable animal, and they have a lot of character.
This iconic species is of great importance to Sweden. Moose, a game and a magnet for tourists, but they also present a huge danger to traffic and the forestry itself. That's why the country counts on a very special expert, the moose detective. In southern Sweden lies the island of Öland. It's famous for its mills and ancient Viking graves. Every year, the royal family spends their summer vacation here at Castle Soliden. Recently, a problem has developed on Öland regarding its moose. The island has called upon the moose detective to investigate.
Well, the moose in Sweden is by far the most valuable wildlife that we have. It's such an important animal that concerns so many people. And if something is wrong with the moose population in Sweden, everyone wants to know what is going on.
Fredrik Steinbacker and his team are asked to find the cause. As a first step, he decides to immobilize the moose cow. The mission is not easy. The dart recoils. The cow escapes, for now. Fredrik marks the lost dart with red tape. He will collect it later. Every effort is made to save the moose calves. For a few years now on Öland, they've been dying shortly after birth. It's a mystery. It's now February, and the depths of winter hit Öland. Tough, icy conditions, particularly out in the wilderness. Fredrik gives the cow time to recover from her fall. But the sooner he gets her darted, the easier it will be on the cow. The chase will cost resources. But without this pursuit, Fredrik wouldn't be able to attach satellite collars to the moose. From their data, he wants to learn where the moose eat and sleep, and to where they migrate. On the team, state veterinarian Jonas Malmsten. He examines the cow for diseases.
Working with such a beautiful animal, that's almost a blessing. It gets to become a real intimate relation, and the moose they are individuals just like us, and some moose you remember really well because some are so special. It's really an honor to be working with them, and they have so much character.
Moose can be very protective creatures.
It's an amazing animal to work with. Large, dignified, respectable and beautiful.
Truly amazing. They're magnificent and calm. They mean so much to Scandinavia and always have.
As soon as the satellite collar is attached, Fredrik and Jonas look for clues to resolve the mystery. The size indicates whether the animal has developed correctly. Any trace could help at this stage, no matter how small.
We're looking for deer flies. These are blood-sucking insects that can spread disease. They fly in autumn, and when they land on a moose, they drop their wings and stay there. They weaken the animal. But I can't find any.
A disease could be an explanation for the calves' early deaths. Additionally, the detectives use another very special high-tech device.
It's a mortality implant. that we put down in the stomach, and it communicates with the collar, and we can measure the body temperature of the moose.
This way, Fredrik will know when a collared moose dies. The animal can be examined immediately. If it has any disease, the biologist will detect it and quickly take the appropriate action.
I think it's a lot of detective work. I think that's a little bit how we think. We come up with an idea, we observe the nature, we wonder what is going on, we set up a hypothesis, and we maybe find the answer or part of the answer.
Hopefully this cow will deliver answers soon.
We have some ideas, and I'm sure we will at least come up with parts of the answer what's going on there within these next years. If it's a riddle to be solved.
Fredrik's operation site is down in the south of Sweden, close to the eastern coast, the island of Öland. The south of Öland boasts a very special landscape. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which for hundreds of years was nurtured by farmers, like Johan Parboeng. The fallow deer and the moose around the lighthouse of Ottenby are very dear to Johan. As a former gamekeeper to the King of Sweden, he took care of them for a long time.
Yeah, the Swedish king I've been working for a few years. I know him a bit, and he's very interesting about the population of moose on Öland. He's interested in the most of things becoming to wild animals, and he's like the rest of the Swedish people. He's interested about the nature. He's always interested about hunts.
If Johan had his choice, the hunters would have to be prepared to make some sacrifices.
The moose population is going down the last years, so we have to stop the moose hunting for the new living calves who are coming out. We have to take care of these animals who is born now and see what happens in the future.
A hunting ban would be a start, but it wouldn't be enough to secure the survival of Öland's moose. No more than around 500 animals now remain. Moose detective Fredrik is still searching for moose cows at sunset.
I think it's amazing, flying over Stora Alvaret. It's like a savanna we have in Sweden. And then all these stone walls, kilometer after kilometer, that has been built several generations of people on Öland. It's really breathtaking.
In the past, farmers kept their livestock out here. Little is left of that at this point. Nowadays, trees get a chance to grow and conveniently provide cover for the moose. Despite their sheer size, it's only as they move that the animals become visible. This cow already has a collar. Fredrik wants to exchange it. The batteries of the transmitter are low. This time around, the first dart hits its target. The cow is an old acquaintance. She's Öland's only moose with a name, Cementa, named after a cement works close by to where she was collared for the first time. With an estimated age of 9 years, she's in the prime of her life, and therefore a good case study to follow, particularly in the event of a future pregnancy. One last shot of the antidote, and the inspection is over.
You're so good, Cementa. Yes, you're a sweetheart.
Throughout the whole of Sweden, there are around 400,000 moose altogether. Larger roads are protected by moose fences, and for good reason. Every year, there are about 4,500 accidents involving moose, some of them fatal.
A moose standing on this road will be very high, and you basically hit the legs of it and it will fall on the motorhead and come in through the windshield. Many of the collisions it rolls over on the roof, but many of the lethal accidents for humans have been that it comes through the windshield, and if you get several hundred of kilos of moose over you, it's you can just imagine.
And it's not only on the roads. The moose cause further damage elsewhere. With his hunting dog Vitra, Fredrik visits a plantation. This is where the moose search for food. Even in the harsh winter, they manage to find green shoots. But the forestry pays the price.
There's been quite a few moose in this plantation during the winters. There's a lot of feces here. We see the top shoot bites, we have bark eating, we also have fresh stem breaks. A lot of these side shoot bites also. So this pine will never be anything when it comes to timber quality.
Feeding stations with balls of hay are supposed to keep the moose away from plantations and streets. The movement profiles from the satellite collars show that these seem to be working. The data reveals exactly where the moose could pose a threat as they cross streets between their sleeping sites and feeding grounds. Even an encounter on foot is supposed to be risky for humans.
I wouldn't say it's dangerous at all. Of course you have to be careful, it's a big animal and you never know with animals, but the female moose that we sneak up on in the spring, they're really individuals. Some stay really close to us when we're handling and weighing the calf. They might be a little bit too close sometimes, but it's just a matter of standing up and shouting a little bit, they will go away. Some other they just run off and you never will see them while handling the calf, and then they return.
A 1,000 kilometers to the north of Öland lies Umeå, home to the moose detectives' headquarters at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, SLU. At his computer, Fredrik tracks the movements of all of the collared moose in the country, approximately 200 animals, including the ones on Öland.
Well, what we see from the collared moose is that the female moose, they try to time that they are in a good spot when they do the calving, because that's when they need good qualitative food for lactating when they're giving birth to their calf.
Fredrik is hoping that his monitoring of the moose's behavior during the birthing period will explain why so many calves are dying at that time. But first, there's some bad news. A satellite collar reports a dead cow. In a small patch of trees on Öland, a cow has perished. To discover the cause, veterinarian Jonas wants to conduct an autopsy on location.
The teeth are worn down. There's not much left of them. I would like to take the jaw to the lab to find out how old she is. Let's see if we can turn her over.
Decay has already set in, and the cow is full of gas. It's not a pleasant task to cut her open.
This is the liver. It's very congested. It's really hard. And it's not supposed to be hard. So she might have some liver disease or cirrhosis, as we say it. It's synonymous with the type of liver that alcoholics get.
Every lead, however small, is important. A sign of a disease could be an explanation for the early deaths of the calves on the island. Finally, the autopsy produces a preliminary result.
I'm suspecting a combination of old age and some metabolism, because the teeth they are very, very worn out. They're really worn down, and she has not been able to chew her cud, as we say, properly, I don't think. But there could also be something underneath.
At the laboratory, he discovers that the old cow had more or less starved to death. The reason being the worn-out teeth, and not the liver, as suspected. It seems that diet is a problem on Öland, and it's quite apparent that it plays its part in the early deaths of the calves.
There are several factors going on Öland, and one of them might be the food resources for the mother then. When she's, because the calves on Öland, they most of them die very young, within a days, within 2 weeks, and then they only drink milk. So it's the quality of the females, the mother's milk, that is crucial.
Isn't the cow getting enough nutrients to produce high-quality mother's milk? What could have changed? Fredrik has a suspicion. For several years now, spring has arrived earlier and earlier. The analyst of the team, Navinder Singh, has the details.
This shows the monthly changes in greenness over the island, and you can see from January to the end of the year.
Yeah, you could see that the island is starting to sprout and getting green already in April.
Mm-hmm.
So in late April, that's maybe when they should give birth. But now, these last years, we have even had some Öland moose females that have given birth in June.
So you suspect that there is a mismatch between their calving and
I think so.
the timing?
I think they calve too late, and then you want this really high qualitative young leaves and stuff like that to get good milk for the calves. Because in June you won't have any fresh leaves anymore to get this really good qualitative food. It's too woody already. Do you think we can see any patterns of that in their movement?
We know that moose females move in a restricted way when the calf is born, because the calf cannot move with them. So that could be possible to compare then with the moose mothers inland. And then we will see that the moose mothers in Öland will move much more after giving birth.
Yeah, that could be a likely hypothesis. Worth testing.
But for now, Fredrik calls it a day. Time for dinner, and today's serving, roast moose.
It really depends from person to person how clean you want your meat from fat and ligament. But like on this one, a beautiful steak, I take away some of the ligaments, and because I have a dog, it doesn't go to waste.
Hunting dog Vitra enjoys the moose meat just as much as Fredrik.
For being a big herbivore living in the forest, moose meat is not tough compared to red deer or roe deer. For example, it's milder. It's easy to cook, hard to go wrong. Not too soft, not too hard.
After Fredrik has briefly fried the meat, he puts it in the oven, where it will cook for 2 hours. Vitra gets the leftovers, of course, mixed with dog food.
Varsågod.
Fredrik and his wife Nina eat game out of conviction. He himself has shot this evening's moose.
You give the animal a lot of respect all the way from the beginning till the end. Moose meat that you get here in Sweden and Finland, it's probably the purest meat you can get in the world. If you go buy some meat in the store, you don't know what you will get, even if it says where it comes from. But how have these animals been treated? What have they fed them with all kinds of medicines and stuff like that? So we barely don't buy any meat at all. Skål.
Skål.
The Swedish way of animal welfare. It's only over the number of moose that the Swedes disagree among themselves.
Well, it's not too many. There's not enough old moose. I don't see that the forestry should go first. They say it's too many. I think nature has to take the place it has to, and we have to adjust. So more moose is okay with me. And leave some of the big ones as well.
Fredrik's next destination is the far north. Up in the northern parts of the country, the climate change could be observed especially well. It's the land of the Sami people. On Sweden's highest mountain, the Kebnekaise, they still keep their traditions. Sami are reindeer herders. They live season to season alongside their livestock. But more and more often, these seasons are getting mixed up. The reindeer are failing to find food. The snow is too hard. Once melted on warm days, it has now frozen over again. For Hansjö Partapeli, this is also a consequence of the climate change. He has to hand feed the reindeer himself with lichens from the trees.
They only eat the lichen. They are not capable of take the wood like the moose. It seems a little, but if you one day go and where there are trees left, old trees who have this, they are living by it. It's the nature. You see how gently they're very skilled at it. No wood in their mouth. No wood, only the lichen.
Being so skilled and specialized in one area could lead to some trouble when the elements change. And in the past few years, spring has arrived ever earlier. It's little clues such as these that moose detective Fredrik is searching for. Below the Kebnekaise, there are more moose that he and his team have been watching for years. Global warming is beginning to show its effect. The glaciers are melting, but the moose in northern Sweden seem to be doing well so far.
Here we see some fresh browsing from moose from this winter. They have been eating willow. The best food is of course in the spring, early summer, when it's really sprouting. You get the leaves, and that's when you get high quality food, and also for the cows when they lactate, giving milk to the calves. Then it's very important. Winter food is also always, of course, of worse quality. But no, willow as it's good for the winter. It's better than birch, better than pine.
On the birches, visible bite marks can be seen, and it's there that the perpetrator is revealed. This far up in the north, the moose are remarkably larger than on Öland. Their size protects them from the cold. The more body mass they have in comparison to skin surface, the better they are insulated from the cold. Fredrik calls in the helicopter. Here in the north, he also wants to dart moose to equip them with radio collars.
It is very dangerous. We have two different components in these doses. One part immobilizes the moose so it can't move. And it is this, the etafine, which is very dangerous. There's always one drop left in the cannula, in the needle, even though it has been emptied in the moose. And that one drop alone can wipe out all of us in the helicopter. So there has to be a lot of safety precautions.
The pilot is a military veteran with years of experience, but still, a slight risk remains. Against the snow, the moose are far more visible than on Öland. In no time at all, Fredrik has located a cow with a calf born last year. After the cow collapses, it takes a moment for her companions to leave. They will gather again afterwards. This is the moment Fredrik has been waiting for.
We are at the northern border of the moose's geographic range. That makes it interesting. Here we can study the effects of the climate change.
To spare the cow from a traumatic experience, Fredrik covers her eyes. An oxygen pipe helps with the breathing. Then the examination begins with a blood sample.
She's pressing against my knee. Moose are so heavy. That is a problem if they are lying in the wrong position. Our vet wants the head up higher than the body so that no stomach fluid travels upwards. And we need access from the right side. But to move a cow of more than 500 kilo in the deep snow, that is almost impossible. Also, there's absolutely no comfortable posture in this task.
Fredrik will no doubt end up with a backache, but in the end, it's all for the good of the moose. One last check, then the cow gets her antidote. Within a few minutes, she's up on her feet again. The anesthesia didn't harm her. Fredrik is satisfied. The cow will continue to provide the team with data from an almost empty wilderness on the 2,000-meter-high Kebnekaise. The next morning brings a change in weather. The wind is getting higher. From the west, a snowstorm is approaching. Whether the helicopter can fly in this weather is uncertain.
Today is a challenge with the weather, but you have to expect that. Mountain weather can change any time. Yesterday we had beautiful sunshine, almost no wind. We could fly in on the moose from more or less any direction. Today we have average winds of more than 20 meters per second. These are very rough conditions. Let's see how it goes. We might have to cancel, but we'll give it a try.
But despite the weather, Fredrik manages to dart a moose.
It's really difficult. Difficult to land. And now it's cold. The journals are flying about, hands are freezing, snow is everywhere.
And it hurts not being able to wear gloves at minus 20 degrees Celsius. The moose cow is well protected against the cold. In fact, she encounters difficulties if it's too warm. Up here, north of the polar circle, she's in her element. Two months later in May, spring has sprung on the island of Öland. The first moose calves are born. Shortly after the birth, the mother licks the calf clean. On the limestone plateau of the Stora Alvoret, orchids blossom, along with common cowslips. Only a few remaining species thrive on the barren ground. It's unusual vegetation that manages with limited soil. Just a thin layer of plants cover the limestone below. In the quarries, farmers once extracted building material for houses and the traditional walls of Öland. This special vegetation is a challenge for the moose. Fredrik is looking for suitable forage plants and discovers more bite marks.
It's really amazing to find moose here, because the vegetation is dominated for sure by juniper bushes and Öland stuk. You can imagine it's not pretty good food for the female mooses giving birth right now.
This means very limited food for Öland's moose. The large deer are highly specialized. They don't graze, but browse leaves and shoots from trees and bushes. Being ruminants, they extract every last drop of energy from the greens, using their 4 stomachs. On the Alvoret, Fredrik is waiting for the GPS position of a cow. Her movement pattern has brought him here.
I have no idea what will happen. We will go in to a female that has lost her calves 2 years in a row. They've been dead early or deadly born. So that's why we now take the rifles with us. Because if the calves are dead, if she's alone, we'll try to immobilize her and take some samples of her. But if the calves are with her and they're alive, we will focus on the calves and see if we can weigh them instead.
A local, Kent Nielsen, is trying to get a bearing of the cow's radio transmitter. She's less than 500 meters away. The moose cow won't move unless she has to. Her low activity is what led Fredrik to realize that she had given birth.
Well, it's not easy, and especially here on Öland, you can see the surroundings. It's a very dense juniper bushes. And the vegetation is, in some places, you can't even get through it. Both have man height and knee height. so it's very tricky. She's very well equipped. She has the big advantage. Very good hearing, a big nose, so you always have to work against the wind.
So, Erland, did you see her? I saw something against that pine. If that is the calf in the bush, she could be lying somewhere close by. So, towards the withered tree. Do you see it?
The cow is less than 20 meters away. But in the thick bushes, she makes her escape. Her calf is left behind. Longing for its mother, the calf cries out. It's only a day old and still completely helpless. Fredrik and Kent have to hurry. They don't want to examine the calf for any longer than 2 minutes. The young gives the impression of being strong and healthy. There's no sign of malnutrition yet, but that could change in the coming days.
It was very successful. Now we found a live one, decent weight, 10.9. Better to find a live one than a dead one, for sure.
And with some luck, this calf might be one of those that survive. Wildlife has always played an important role on Öland. Since the mid-1700s, a wall separates the southern tip from the rest of the island. It was built to keep the game inside the king's hunting grounds. Today it's still home to the king's fallow deer. For the moose, the fallows are no competition for food. They are grazers. State veterinarian Jonas is visiting the former gamekeeper Johan.
Fallow deers and moose mixing together fairly well in this area. If it's in the winter time, they're mixing really good together because it's no other people who disturbs the moose because they are wild animals and go together fairly good.
But there's another deer species that the moose have to share their food with. And that might be critical with the ongoing scarcity of food around the time of birth. Jonas is worried.
Between the moose and the fallow deer, there shouldn't be any competition. But the roe deer is a browser and so is the moose. Although they are of different sizes, they still tend to compete. If there are moose in high numbers, roe deer in high numbers, and also the availability of food is a bit limited, which could mean that the moose in some ways may fall out on that.
But there have always been roe deer on Öland. Why would the moose now have problems coping alongside their smaller relatives? Jonas has an idea.
Red fox almost disappeared from Öland in the beginning of the millennium. In 2004, the parasitic disease, sarcoptic mange, affected the foxes on the island. So they died out almost. And the fox being the largest or the most important predator on roe deer, the roe deer were set free in a way because they had no enemies besides the hunting. The population grew in an explosive speed.
To reduce the number of roe deer, hunters could allow the foxes to roam freely. But not everybody is in favor of this idea. Farmer Johan is letting out his lambs into the pasture for the first time this year. Outside of the stables, the youngsters are completely at the mercy of any predator.
Yeah, it's always in danger when fox is around because right now when the lambs is out, the fox need lots of food for the puppies. And if a fox have 4 or 5 puppies, then one lamb is not enough. And if it starts to kill, it continues killing till you take the fox. But I have a gun, and if I see a fox, it's a dead fox.
Many of the farmers would agree with Johan. They want to protect their livestock. But Johan has a bigger agenda. His pastures are home to many meadow and wading birds.
It's more good for the environment. We get special birds back who live by the waters, and the birds who can't defend themselves or something, and it's the population of these birds is going down really much.
It seems absurd. The protection of endangered birds ultimately seems to cause a lack of food for the moose. But perhaps there is a connection. On the island of Öland, these connections arise more clearly than on the mainland. Out here, the animals simply can't escape. So there are two leads that the moose detective and his team have to follow. Who is the culprit? The scarcity of food or the climate change? Some evidence is still missing. Jonas needs to search for more calves.
It's quite painful. These thorns and shrubs and bushes, they really tend to rip you apart, especially in this type of environment. You tend to attract a lot of ticks, so you have to get rid of them too when you arrive at home at night. But it's hard, and it wears you down a little bit.
We have to get there, but quietly.
Many obstacles stand in the way. If just one stone from the wall starts to roll, the noise would travel through the whole forest.
She doesn't really know we're there, but we have to be really, really careful because the wind might shift a little bit. And if we break a little twig, she will know right away. And then we may not be sure where exactly she is, so we will fail to find her location. So we have to be really, really, really careful the last 20, 40 meters.
Finally, the cow makes a dash through the woods, and Jonas and Kent have to hurry to catch the calf in time. To their great joy, there are actually two calves.
It's a pair of twins. She seems to be a good mother. They were just lying here in their calving place, and they were born yesterday. We have marked and weighed them, and now we'll release them and head out quickly.
They leave swiftly, as the little ones would certainly try to follow them. The calves quickly assign and accept new foster parents. At Solidum Palace, the summer residence of the royal family on Öland, there are signs of festivities. It's the 14th of July, the birthday of Crown Princess Victoria. Many Swedes want to congratulate her, Johan too. His present, a smorgasbord.
I've been working for the family for 11 years. They're living on Öland, the same as I do, and the rest of the people on Öland is a fairly important day for this because it's a traditional one and traditions should be kept.
And Victoria brings the whole family along, including her father, King Carl Gustaf.
So we celebrate the Crown Princess on her festive day with a little jingle. Sing along. the crown princess. Hip hip, hooray!
Bravo, tack! Tusen tack. Då vill jag givetvis också hälsa er alla välkomna.
1,000 thanks. I'd like to welcome you all to Soliden on this day, now that it's stopped raining. Yippee!
Yippee!
It's very touching that so many of you have come out despite the weather.
And then it's time for the presents. Her Royal Highness spends 2 hours shaking hands. Finally, it's gamekeeper Johan's turn.
Oh, what's happening here? Wow.
You can choose the cheese yourself.
I can choose the cheese myself, but how wonderful.
How nice. You make them yourself? No, a friend of mine.
Send my regards then, so lovely.
Very talented.
A warm thank you. Let's see, I can't walk around with them. It feels a bit...
Heavy after a while?
Oh, yes.
Daughter Estelle is less interested in the presents and more into the brass band music. It's a very festive day on the King's Island of Öland. Out in the small reserves on the limestone plateau Stora Alvoret, nature is left to take care of itself. Moose detective Fredrik has discovered another movement pattern of a cow that looks like she's given birth. But the chances of sneaking up on her are slim. The open field doesn't provide much cover.
We will sneak over to the next juniper bush and then to the stone wall. They should be on the other side.
This time, they only find a dead calf.
Sad. In our line of work, we know it will happen, especially here on Öland, but it's sad. This was a really nice female, one of the biggest ones we marked here on Öland. First we actually thought in February when we heard that she was a bull.
Right away, they start their forensic work.
Still not dry.
And Jonas discovers another clue.
You can see here on the feet that there's like a thin membrane that wears off when the calf has been up walking. So this calf was born alive and then died within a day.
So let's weigh it. Exactly 10 kilos.
The cause of death is not visible at first sight.
When we're opening this calf, we will probably see that it hasn't fed and that it hasn't been stimulated in the back. And some observations that are made is that the cow will not allow it to feed.
Results will later confirm that, neglected by its mother, the calf starved to death within hours of birth. Öland's Stora Alvoret is evidently not the best habitat for moose. There is simply not enough food, and slight environmental changes have a big impact. However, some caring moose mothers do manage to raise their calves despite the conditions. So what about the future? Moose detective Fredrik and his colleagues have identified two crucial factors that might be responsible for the calves' early deaths.
course, if it's competition with other animals, roe deers, and there's a lot of roe deers here, you can manage the population in different ways. If it's something to do with vegetation, that's with our ongoing climate change, the vegetation might change. So you don't really know where we're going in the future.
Moose on Öland may only be able to survive with food directly administered by humans.
And then of course the question is, how much do you really want to interfere with wildlife? Should it just go on its own, and if there is not the right food here for the moose, well, that's it. Should we really do supplementary feeding? Of course, depends on how we want to manage it.
Mankind is most likely co-responsible for the situation of the moose on Öland. Whatever happens with these animals is in their hands now. The moose detective and his team will continue to collect evidence to finally solve it completely. The mystery of Öland.